comment that we made in there was that the CM's contract is still being negotiated with the attorney. I was drawn into a meeting with, I guess, the deputy town manager, the director of public works, and the attorney last week. There's some language that they've asked me to present to O&G. We're in the process of getting that incorporated into the comment. There may be some back and forth about some changes that your insurance agent made to the insurance requirements. We just need to look at that with a little finer detail.
Okay.
But we're getting close to putting ink on paper, so that's the good news there.
Good.
One item as far as professional services we've been discussing within the design team is the potential of having the detailing of the steel, basically the shop drawings, done as part of the bid set. We've had very good results in doing this on previous projects in discussing with the structural engineer of record. They also have done it and are in favor of it, especially with the extended lead times that we're finding with materials in the market right now. This will allow two things. It allows the bidders to be much more exact in what they're bidding on, because everything is detailed already. And it also expedites the shop drawing approval process, because basically they're about 98% done as you go out to bid, and that expedites the steel to arrive on site. So as we talk about broader issues of project scheduling, this could be advantageous. The intent would be to have this detailing consultant work through Tecton. Tecton has reached out to them for a proposal, which unfortunately was not received in time to make it part of the packet. But that is something that we found great benefit in doing on previous projects, and that we would recommend that you consider. I wish we just had the proposal to know just roughly what that's going to look like. I've actually done an analysis on a recent project of what we paid the detailer as part of this expansion of the bid package versus what the steel contractor would have charged for that same effort, and found that it was actually more of, in addition to the tighter bids and faster delivery to the site, it actually in that case turned out to be cheaper for us to have done it through a detailing consultant than to have paid the contractor for it. So there's a number of benefits.
Can you hold on? Anybody have
Sure.
any questions regarding that? John, Salvatore, any comments?
No, I understand what it is. Yeah, I'm just curious. So who does the steel contractor still field measures everything, correct?
There may, as an addition, there may be some points that need to be field verified, but generally all the new steel is all
done.
done.
But this is an addition, so that you are tying in, I assume, probably to the existing building.
So there may be some critical points to verify in the field.
Yeah.
Lucian, you have any comments? Lucian? You have any comments?
I'm good with
No? Okay. Mike Egan, any comments?
Hey, it just same as John, as long as there's, we're not double covering it, because they're going to do portions of it anyways. I mean, they're going to have to do, they'll do, it's basically shop drawings that they're getting, but then there's some difference between shop drawings and what gets installed.
What gets done, right? Mark, you have a question?
Well, if I could just elaborate on it too, what typically happens is the detailing is done all the way to the point where the last bit of engineering of the connections is done by the trade, because whether the steel contractor who gets the project is either a bolt up shop or a weld up shop, that's where those details all have to get the final tweaking. But that process, typically what we've seen in on past projects with the pre-detailing too is that even with a tighter schedule, we can make sure that the steel's there certainly by the time foundations are done.
Good. Move on, John.
Okay.
Yep.
Next comment in my written report is on schedule. The 90-day look ahead is in there. That's a broader discussion that we should be having as we get into the broader conversation of design progress and what's happening out in the market, and what conversations we've had with the school. But generally speaking, the design development effort, as you know, is concluded. The documents went to both Tecton's estimator and O&G for pricing. We one meeting so far in talking through that and starting to reconcile the numbers. The numbers between the two estimates were relatively close, which was a good place to start. We understand that there are always some differences of perspective, but generally it was a productive meeting last week, and we have follow-up meetings about the MEP systems to continue on this week. To go right to the punchline on it, even though the estimates are close to each other, we're not as close to our budget as we'd like to be. And there are analyses being done by both estimators. I've gotten the verbal description. Dave and I talked this afternoon and got the highlights of O&G's perspective on where the dollars are. We've gotten a summary from PAC's, Tecton's estimator, on things that have happened in the market and have happened to the project direction since the grant application was submitted, which explains why we are where we are. A very big piece of that is what's been happening in the construction market with the escalation in prices, especially things like piping, wire, mechanical equipment. There's also a scope creep element where the Clean Energy Task Force and their hopes for the project were things that were not initially budgeted into the project at grant application time. So there's a little bit of spread in cost there on the MEP side of the house. And then, beg pardon?
Are those MEP requirements required?
It is the direction that the committee has said that they'd like to go in, based on the recommendations of the Clean Energy Task Force. So that is a broader discussion to see, do we pursue the funding necessary to make this building closer to net zero ready, or do we go to a more mundane, conventional MEP system and bring those dollars back out? I don't know that we will have something to suggest to you that will absorb all of the costs as far as value engineering to be able to compensate for what's being done in the market. Obviously, the scope of the project, we need the number of classrooms that we need. The town has expectations on the level of quality and the quality of materials that goes in there.
Okay.
So that there are things that we should discuss that could be savings. And I know that O&G is active in creating a list of items that could be considered to.
Well, one of the comments I want to make, and I think somebody else will make, and Eric maybe can back me up in this, but if we're going to go over budget in reference to the school project, we should know that fairly quickly so that we can go back to both the Board of Education and the Board of Finance to find out what where the money is coming from and can we get more money, so that we don't get into the project and all of a sudden have no money to pay O&G or whoever.
Right.
So we need to know that quite soon, and that budget's going to have to be a budget we have to live throughout from start to finish.
Right.
Eric, do you want to comment on that or not?
No argument for me, Dick.
Now, aligned with that is a thought that we had, that due to the fact that we're into these very technical discussions and we'll be presenting you with information that's going to require action, we would ask, the project team would ask that you would consider going to 2 meetings per month instead of 1 meeting per month, so that we can present you with these issues and act on them in a more timely fashion.
When? Starting when?
I'll look at Justin. Would you, let's see, Dave and I were talking that with evaluation of the estimates and coming up with some value management recommendations, we could be ready in 2 weeks.
Oh, so you're starting to say in April, we should start two meetings.
Starting in March, starting 2 weeks from now.
Or 2 weeks from now, have another meeting. Okay, yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. Any other questions? Lucian?
Can you tell us, Jack, what's the delta?
The HVAC system cost increase based on scope increase when you put the earthwork for the geothermal wells in with it and add your markups, it comes into just over $2.5 million.
That's the delta on the overall project?
That's what that element of new scope is, in the opinion of the estimator.
That's not right. That's not the overall though.
No, that was the delta.
That's just the delta.
Yeah, that one division. That's what Lucian said. What's the overall?
Right now, Dave, what was the latest? What did we,
After, again,
as we
as
compared?
we continue to revise it as we go through reconciliation efforts, but as of this afternoon, we were at about 7.3 million over.
20%.
What?
So what is the number for construction cost?
When we say construction, we're talking the proposed GMP value. So it has the
Right.
contingencies, everything. Actually, it would be, sorry, because I just have some hand math here on my estimate. So it'd be essentially 38 million even.
And our,
Because the budget's 30,700,000.
And we're at
The
38.
latest from our senior estimator was 7.3.
So we're $7 million over budget.
Is that reconciled or is that O&G, which is higher than the architects?
No, it's not 100% reconciled yet, Mike. We made it through some divisions, but the MEP still has to go. But I don't know, Justin, if you have what PAX's overall was. I want to say when we started reconciliation, I want to say that PAX and O&G were somewhere about $500,000 apart on the overall project from one another. But through reconciliation, there was obviously some up and down one direction or the other. So I'm not exactly sure where we are and if Tom has done a partial update or not. Like I said, we've been trying to update it as we go.
I'm curious, what kind of contingency are you including in that based upon the current rate of inflation?
Right. So we're still
And by current, I mean
carrying
within the last week.
Yeah, well, I know, and that's, you bring up a really good point. I mean, we're still showing 6.5% per year, and then going to the start of the bid date. So this estimate had 2.17%, and then obviously all the trade costs within it are all absorbing what we've seen as far as the escalation to date.
Okay.
Those already include the premiums to date, is what you're saying.
Those
Right.
already include,
Correct.
right? Because those are, when we're getting quotes, we're getting today's
Current,
dollars for things.
today's price.
I understand.
So there's still a design development to full CDs contingency of 6% on
Correct.
top of that escalation number of 2.17.
Okay.
So those are, there is some expectation of growth factored in there.
When do you think you have more solid numbers? Would you have them at the, say, the 21st? If we have a meeting on the 21st?
That is our path. Yes, the team is
I think
working
that's
to be
what we
ready
need
for
to
that.
hold off. Let's see, and you can get to us a copy of the actual budget, each item. So if we see in the budget as per budgeted, as per what the bid is, so we know where we're at.
Yep, I can.
Everybody agree to that?
I'll compile that for you.
Sure, I do have a couple of questions, if I may.
Go ahead. Yep.
John, you had mentioned two different factors, if I understand, that are driving this. One being inflation. I get that, though I would want to see the numbers. The other being scope creep, and you're saying that was being driven by the Green Energy Task Force.
That's the largest line item, yes.
So can you give me some more specifics on that? Because what I recall was this was always intended to be a net zero ready building, and that the only kind of delta we were talking about is we didn't have budgeted in the PV on the roof. Can you speak to me kind of more specifically about where there's been specific scope creep and where that's coming from?
Well, I'll point that direction more appropriately at the design team to talk about what was being envisioned at the time of grant application last June versus where we are today. And I don't know, Justin, if you want to take that or pass that off to CES.
Justin?
Jeff, you may want to help me out.
I can answer that. Okay. So 0 as far as the Clean Energy Task Force. We did not have meetings with them beforehand, and we did not adjust the referendum budget for this, but we did come back and present a couple different geothermal options that, I think, Brian, after I'm done talking, I think you should add some more detail to. And I think what happened we talked about a hybrid geothermal system. And I think what was put into the DD documents was an entire thermal system. So I think that's where we have to look at some reconciliation. But to answer your question on point, Ryan, is the original referendum budget did not contemplate any kind of clean energy task force requests. But we were trying to come up with a system, which was that hybrid geothermal system, to try to set it up for a greener building. So that's what I think they're talking about, the scope creep. We still have to have that level setting meeting with the mechanical systems to fully understand why that's 2.1 and $300,000. Brian, do you have more to add to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to, kind of add to what you said, we're always going into this design to do the two base systems, 100% geothermal, obviously, if the, the money was there to provide it, and then a hybrid system. And we also said that we kind of last into DDs to see where pricing came out, and we always have the backup option as, kind of more base system, air-cooled chiller, condensing boilers if the prices, are getting out of control. So we can always, react and go that route and really not change too much design in the building overall.
Now, one element of the quote unquote scope increase is that at present, the design is looking at the roofing system that's on the building and finding that there are features of the existing roof, even though it's not that old, do not meet current code requirements as far as the minimum level of insulation. On average, you're very well insulated, but this roof was replaced in the era when the state was requiring 1/2 inch per foot for slope and a whole different set of descriptions of what was good enough for insulating the roof. If we can pursue some sort of code mod that says, here's a perfectly good roof that doesn't really need to be cut up, and it still has life left in it, and if we can get the warranty holder to show us a plan of how we can enhance what's there to advance the warranty to still have 20 years left, or to renew the warranty for 20 years once the job is done and not have to replace that.
Right.
That's an element that's worth
Yeah.
almost $1 million.
Right.
But before we pursue that, something I would personally be interested in is understanding kind of the effect. If we're going for a net zero building, and then we're having a non-code compliant roof for insulation, that seems to be a bit counterproductive. Now, it may be insignificant,
It sounds
or
that
it
way.
may be significant, but I don't want to rush down that path and try to have an antiquated roof that we're then going to put PV on so we couldn't replace it later.
Right.
If it's not going to, add to the, heat envelope of the building.
Understandable. And if I think the linchpin to that conversation is, can we get
Right.
what can we do something to that roof so that we can renew a 20-year warranty for it? With the description, and really it's not like it's a poorly insulated roof. In some ways, Justin, what were we at, 18 inches of insulation at the perimeter?
17.5 inches at the perimeter of the building.
Yeah, but what are we at the drains? That's where it's going to matter. Right?
1/2 inch.
That's less good.
But when we take the average R value of what you've got there compared to
Right.
a brand new roof today, you might well have more net R value in the roof
Right.
than a brand new one.
But there's a reason why they're not allowing averaging anymore. Because if you have a giant hole in the middle of your roof and you're letting heat go there, that you have 18 inches on the outside isn't going to matter. Again, I'm not a construction expert, but I before we go running down that path, I'd like to see what the kind of consequences and heat losses are before we go trying to cut corners on that one.
I agreed. And again, the code was written and then modified by Connecticut to conform to the statute that required the 1/2 inch slope. So it's actually, even though it was built in that era when the model code said you could go down to next to nothing at the drains, because of what Connecticut did by statute at the time, you've got excessive amounts of insulation everywhere but the drains. So that's why we would need to do the analysis to see on average, is it as good or better than we would build today? And really, before that conversation makes much sense, we need to find out if we can get the warranty extended for another 20 years.
Right.
Because
Right.
without that, then all bets are off.
Right. I
We'd
think we
have to
need to
do
pursue
some-
that and see, yeah.
Yeah,
The
but
answer.
if we're successful on both those calculations for the net relative insulation and regarding the warranty, or can we do a roof restoration where we top coat what's there and then get a
Yep.
new 20-year warranty on the top coat? Those are very important conversations that could save us
Dig through that. and you
somewhere
can
close
report
to $1
that-
million.
Report that to us next time. Okay, moving on.
Dick, I got
that-
a couple of questions on the roof and the budget.
Go ahead.
Does the current budget include that roof duct passage system and the fewer number of ERVs, or did you already put in the more ERVs and what we talked about last time? Did that all
We
get
did. We got
incorporated?
we got more REVs involved as far as I remember. We already covered that.
Correct.
Okay, and so none of the budget overage is for that roof system to allow for pipes and
No.
ducts?
No,
No.
that
Where
died an
the-
early death.
What are the wells worth?
1 mil.
Dave, do you have that?
I have a number in front of me, but it's isolated to just the earthwork for the geothermal wells at 303. So my big picture is probably about 500.
Geothermal well field 26, that would be the half field at 500 feet deep, is without markups just shy of $800,000. So roughly about $1 million marked up
See,
for the
this
half
is why,
half field.
and this is why we need a reconciliation meeting for the MEP systems before we bring this to the committee.
Yeah.
So
That there's the discussion who's got full well field, who's got half well field.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
thought was that we'd go half and have an alternate to go to full.
Okay, Mike, any other questions?
None now.
Lucian? No questions?
Well, there are $7 million that we are short. You're not going to make that in the HVAC. HVAC is 2 million, so you still have 5 million that we are short.
Right. And so there may be
But-
elements that we can rethink.
Right.
There may be some bottom line number of additional dollars that we'll need to ask for. But that's why I say in the
That's
next
what we
2
need to
weeks,
know, right?
in the next 2 weeks, these reconciliations and discussions are going to be very important.
Right.
And the HVAC, you have $1 million in the geothermal. So even if you go from geothermal to conventional, you're not going to save $2 million.
Well,
Right.
we'll cover
I
that
mean,
with,
it's a big delta. I mean, it's hard. This is not just a little bit here and there. This is major surgery that we have to do.
right.
And if we're going to have these discussions, I would like to be prepared to have specific conversations on the drivers, not just kind of the broad scope, but like, listen, this piece of this system. So if we can make sure that if we're having this conversation, we can understand very specifically the drivers,
Yeah.
that would be helpful.
Yeah, once we get into the design detail, more detail and the budget, you can do that, Ryan, without any problem. We
So-
normally do that.
So I think what Jack recommended or asked for the bi-weekly meetings, I think it's a good idea. And
I think it's a good idea. And we're going to go into that at the end of the meeting here. So I recommend that. Okay. John, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on. Thank you. Any other questions? Moving on. Tecton.
Okay, so that was quite Justin Hopkins from Tecton Architects. That has really been the crux of what we've been going through the last couple of weeks, but was to understand the reconciliation of the cost estimate. And we had provided a written report, so I'll just give you the highlights of that.
Right.
For our site plan development, I'm happy to report earlier this evening at 5:30, we received a favorable recommendation from the Design Review Board. So we have, it's another check mark in the regulatory process. Our next meeting is with the Zoning Commission. We were originally scheduled for this evening, but due to a a public notice lapse in the Hartford Current. That meeting has been moved to the 21st. So we passed the design review board. Our next step is the zoning commission. That is going to be 2 weeks from this evening.
Okay.
SLR is coordinating the deep stormwater permit for construction activities. As part of that application review is the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, confirmation that this project is not, has no historic properties
Right.
affected. So that was part of the notice that we had included.
Right.
Continuing to meet with Simsbury Public Schools and Principal Lizzetti to discuss specific floor plan reviews, and we have scheduled standing Wednesday afternoon meetings to discuss the food service finalization, media center finalization, security technology and access control coordination, and finishes and color palette coordination. So
Okay.
we have a lot of these kind of detail-oriented coordination meetings in front of us. And Jack had mentioned the pre-detailing of the steel that we anticipate having a proposal for our next meeting with Paul Proto from Ram Drafting for the pre-detailing of the steel. We have an OSCGNR design development review meeting for the 22nd, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Okay.
We had mentioned the cost estimate coordination. Phasing plan update. Last week, we held a meeting. Last Friday, we held a meeting with Principal Lizzetti to review O&G's phasing plans for the project. I can share those on the screen if you'd like. Otherwise, there's basically 3 phases in a 24-month duration. And Dave, I don't know if you want to summarize that, or what's the pleasure of the board here? Do you want me to share my screen so you can review?
Well, I think we want to get in more detail before we get into that. Let's get into our budgets and so on and so forth before we get into scheduling.
Okay.
Do that later on.
Okay.
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 Any other comments? Any questions of either Tecton or anyone? Okay. Hearing none, I then go to the invoices. Invoice-
If I may, Dave, please. So if we meet next time, Ryan, if you don't mind, for the HVAC, if you can have some ideas what we can do to, reduce the budget or some creative.
Yeah, they intend to do that. Okay. All right, I have a invoice from Arcadis. It's invoice number 342-84316. The amount of $13,750. I have a motion to accept.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, then the next one would be an invoice number from Tecton. Invoice number 44815. Total amount of the invoice is $103,378.26. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any comments? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Then I have 2 invoices. The first one from Sustainable Engineering Solutions, invoice number 3420 for the amount of $2,000. Has been okay to pay. Any motion to approve?
Did they review the documents?
Yes, this first invoice was for their owner's project requirements effort.
This goes
The
back
second-
to February.
Yeah, the second invoice covers their design development review.
Yep. And a motion to accept?
Yes, so moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, the second invoice from them is for 3394 for the total amount of $3,000. We have a motion to accept that.
So this is for the design development review,
That's
correct?
for the design development, yes. Motion to accept, please.
All right.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Great, moving on. Okay, that covers that for Latimer Lane. Other business, we have none right now, but for our meeting, our meetings are suggesting we meet every 2 weeks now. So our next meeting would be March 21st. Do you want to talk about that for a minute? Any comments? Okay, can we have a proposal? We meet on March 21st via Zoom?
Yeah, I won't be here. I'll be away.
Okay, problem? Do we have a motion to accept March 21st as the next meeting and via Zoom?
Yeah, if I may, yeah. Can we get in advance documents that will be discussed in the meeting, like the budgets or?
Yeah, we'll get it, we package like you normally get, yes.
But not the day of the meeting, at least a couple of days before the meeting. So the meeting is on a Monday, so probably on a Friday.
Friday, yeah.
Right.
If I may, Mr. Chair, we are required to get stuff to the town by noontime on Thursday, the Thursday before your meeting. So
Right,
they should go out in the PBC packet by Thursday afternoon.
right. Yeah, we'll do that. Yep, okay. Okay, so I have a motion to make the next meeting March 21st via Zoom at 7 a.m., 7 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay. Any other things? Hearing none, I hear to move, we adjourn this meeting and see you on the 21st. Any other comments?
Yeah, are we gonna talk about the phasing plan or anything in more detail, or are we gonna wait until they have reconciled estimates? And
Wait until they
basically
reconcile it.
Table everything until next week.
Yep. Let's do it all in one package. We put it together.
Okay, I have one question or comment. It sounds like we're pretty far off on the budget, not just the MEPs. Is requesting more money an option, or are we forced into a value engineering exercise?
No, we request more money, but we have to see what it is first and go back to the Board of Education. Jason would go back to the board and then the town, the Board of Finance, and let them approve the difference before we can move forward. So that's the key issue here. Moving the project.
Well, so based upon that, are we still geared to have a, an early start of the foundation, the steel? Or, knowing that we're over and
In analyzing the design, the work that we thought we might try to jump start as an early phase this spring,
right.
just with the way the building needs to come together, just didn't have the advantages that we once thought. So that's no longer the direction. It's putting it out to bid as one phase.
But,
Okay,
Yep.
but can we go for more money from the town when we have a project that was approved or submitted to the state that had a certain budget?
Yeah, that's the next question. Can we get any money out of the state?
We would have to go back to the state next year and ask for a reauthorization at the higher number.
So what does it?
As long as the town were to approve the dollars, then the state would approve us to go out to bid. We
Right.
cannot go out to bid until at least the town has approved the additional dollars if they're
Right.
needed.
Well, that's why I said we need to know what that money is right down to the, if we, go ahead today, that's what it's going to spend. And if it's over our current budget, we have to get approval first by the Board of Finance. Well, that's the town, basically, the town Board of Finance to move the project forward. So that's why we need that for the next meeting. If we can get
just
the
just
board-
curious.
Eric, I don't know.
How does it affect our schedule?
No,
In
no,
other
we're
words,
gonna-
what's an anticipated start date? I mean, just, what are you thinking?
Right now, the fact that we need to close this gap is affecting our start schedule. The intent was that CDs would be completed in May, that we would go to the state, go through the review process, and by June be out to bid. Right now, with this gap for value management and possibly reauthorization from the town, there is going to be an impact. There's already been some slippage due to the little
Right.
tap dance with O&G, but those we've been working to recover those delays. But now this is a a measurable setback until we cure this issue.
So we're probably
So-
July, at the best
Lucian?
case scenario, yeah.
Lucian,
Yes, so if we go for more money, how does that impact your fee and ONG's fees and design team's fees? That means that will be increase on the fees?
no, that's part of the package right now.
No, it's not part of a cap. The fees and everything else was based on a $30 million project or wherever it was. I assume. I don't know.
Well, Arcadis's fee was based on durations. We were asked for a fixed fee based on
Right.
certain durations.
Right.
So,
Okay.
as the calendar moves, there would be some discussion there.
Okay.
More months in construction would be more months worth of general conditions for O&G.
Okay.
In discussing the first pass O&G made through the phasing was aiming at respecting your 18-month construction period. What that required was taking larger bites out of the building than the operation of the school could afford, unless we provided trailers, for swing space. And when we looked at the price and availability of trailers, it seemed to be the better, financially better direction to take a little bit more time in construction and take smaller bites out of the building. And then that's less disruptive to the school operation as well.
Well,
Invest our money into the building instead of into
I
rentals.
think these are the kind of issues we need to talk about once we get a budget and see what timelines and so on and so forth. So we can get into more detail with it.
And we discussed this extensively when we were, around the time we brought the architect on board.
Yeah.
And, we all felt that, the 24-month schedule was fine if it was going to keep the cost down. And now we have a 24-month schedule that we're probably not going to hit. We're starting late and we're way over
Right.
budget and we're not going to get the systems we
The
want.
project has changed considerably though, Mike. If you look at it compared to what we first talked about, it was, renovation and a small addition. Now look at what the project is almost triple the size of what it was when we first started.
Let me ask a question. Does that budget include the extended duration or the anticipated extended duration? No.
Not yet.
And we need to do that.
There's not one aspect of what we're hearing that's gotten better for the town. We've lost
No,
all.
exactly. I totally agree. Other than they're going to get a new school.
But
Okay.
And I have to echo what Mike's saying here. I mean, this has been very few of the things we're hearing should have been unforeseeable. Like inflation has been a thing for a while. The scope on this project is not newly different. So again, I am very interested to see what the drivers are and why this dramatic shift has happened now, when I don't see, at least when we were talking about putting out the bids for the CM packages, I don't see substantive changes to what the scope of the work was.
Comments? Anybody? Well, let's see when we get the budget and the schedule and all of that, hopefully starting next couple weeks. Okay, Lucian?
Yeah, I
Hearing
agree.
none, I would move to adjourn. Anybody have any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And Jason, if you want to turn us off?